أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Verse number 5 of Surah Al Imran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله لا يخفى عليه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء. Nothing is indeed hidden from Allah in the earth or in the sky. This verse, the meaning of it is obvious. Of course, Allah knows everything. However, why the verse is actually mentioned here in this context, it may have two aspects. One is because, as we mentioned, the whole verses in the beginning of Surah Al Imran was a sort of debate between the Prophet and the Christians of Najran. One of the arguments that Christians made about why God should send His Son on the earth was that God is transcendent, He is above our human realm, and therefore He had to know how humans live on the earth. What are their feelings? He had to talk their talk and walk their walk to understand them, to realize why they sin and why they behave the way they behave, to understand their misery, their happiness. So He sent His Son to the earth so that through Him, He come to a realization of that, and He has mercy on them, and for His Son to take the burden of the sins. So here the verse actually is saying that God doesn't need that. God doesn't need to send someone to find out about the feelings, about the misery or happiness, about the experiences of human beings on the earth. إن الله لا يخفى عليه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء. Allah, from Him nothing is hidden. Nothing is hidden from Allah, whether on the earth or in the heaven, in the sky. وهو الذي في السماء إله وفي الأرض إله. He is, in the same way that He is Ilah in the sky, He is Ilah on the earth as well. The other type of relationship that this verse has to the context of these verses is that because Allah was described as Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, because He was described as that, one of the conditions of Qayyumiyyah, one of the prerequisites of Qayyumiyyah is that He should know about everything, about the need of every creature, whether they are angels or human beings or animals, plants, insects, whatever is on the earth or in the sky, in the heavens, He should know about it. So nothing is concealed from Him, nothing is hidden from Him in the heaven or on the earth. There is one very delicate issue to be mentioned here, and that is about how that knowledge is. Is it, for example, Allah sitting somewhere in the above the seven heavens, for example, on His throne, but He has knowledge of everything? Like us, for example, we sit here, but we have knowledge about the other things which are going on due to receiving some information or communication. Is it like that? Or no, Allah is present with everything. Allah is present in every tiny bit of His creation. Because we say Allah is a whole, and all His attributes are just like his essence. His essence and attributes are not separable from each other. Now, in old days, some of the theologians thought that, well, the knowledge of Allah is something and Allah is something else. He sits somewhere and his knowledge extends everywhere. He knows them by knowledge. And this was a big issue in old theology, whether Allah knows by a knowledge or Allah knows because He is Allah, because of His essence. Not that knowledge is something else and Allah knows by it. It may seem meaningless for us nowadays, but it was a long discussion in the past, and we have in our narrations that some of the Imams were asked about this theological issue, but I don't want to enter into that argument. However, one thing is a matter of dispute between theologians and Ahlul Hadith. And that's the sort of idea that God is sitting somewhere above the heavens. And He is in that direction. If we want to allude to God, He's up there. That's why in prayer we take our hands, we look up when we want to supplicate, because Allah is up there. It's a sort of intrinsic understanding in every human mind. And actually, some of the commentators have mentioned this in their commentary, that Allah is sitting somewhere up there on His throne, and then His knowledge extends everywhere. In Mahasin al-Ta'wil, Jamal al-Din al-Qasimi, the contemporary commentator, of course he has passed away, he mentions a few verses to prove that Allah is above the seven heavens. So that means He sits somewhere and His knowledge extends to everything. He says that there are verses which imply that أن الله تعالى فوق سماواته, He is a station above His skies, the heavens. And then he says, هو مذهب السلف قاطبة كما نقله الإمام الذهبي. This has been the faith and belief of the Salaf, majority of them or all of them, as Imam al-Zahabi has mentioned in his book Al-Ulum. Allah is up there, Al-Ulum. And then he reports from Ibn Rushd that Ahlul Sharia continuously have believed that Allah has a direction. When we want to point at Him, there is a direction for Him. And He's up there. And Ahlul Sharia all believed in that, حتى نفتح المعتزلة, until the Mu'tazilis came and said that it is impossible that we establish a direction for Allah, saying up there or down here, or east or west. And then he says, ثم تبعهم على نفيها متأخر الأشاعرة. Then the Ash'aris later on, just like Mu'tazilis, they said Allah has no direction. However, he says that but والشرائع كلها مبنية على أن الله في السماء. But all the Sharia, all religions, are based on the understanding that Allah is in the heavens. Well, this has been an understanding, I know, but this is absolutely incorrect about Allah. Allah is the creator of direction, is the creator of space, is the creator of time. So how would you place Him in space or in time? That is impossible. And actually, there is a very beautiful hadith reported from a conversation between Imam Ali and some Jews, who proves that it is not the case that Allah is above the seven heavens. It is the case is that Allah is present everywhere, but He is not in space. You cannot say He is here, and you cannot say that He is not here. And this is what is mentioned in Nahjul Balagha. مَعَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ لَا بِمُقَارَنَةٍ وَغَيْرُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ لَا بِمُزَايَلَةٍ. He is with everything, but not in the sense that He is juxtaposed with them, that He is qareen of them, He's sitting beside them. No. And He is away from everything. It's different from everything, but not in the sense that He's absent from them. So that means Allah has eminence in His creation at the same time that He is transcendent. How do we understand this paradoxical matter? We cannot. Allah is different from His creation, but He's present in His creation. How? Now, there is that hadith which I mentioned. There were two Jews who used to come and ask questions from the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he was alive. Apparently, they were not quite satisfied. And after the Prophet passed away, they came to Medina again. And they asked about who is the wasi of the Prophet. We want to ask him certain things. They were guided to Abu Bakr, and they asked him, where is God? They said, we want to ask some questions. And the question that they asked initially was, Ayna Rabbuk? Where is your Lord? And he said, my Lord is فوق السماوات فوق سبع سماوات. He's above the seven heavens. Because there's earth, seven heavens, and then Arsh, Kursi and Arsh, and Allah is up there. Then he said, do you have any other questions? They said, no, we don't have any other questions. They were not satisfied with this answer. And they said, is there anyone else that we can ask? They wanted to actually find someone who could satisfactorily answer this question. And this answer of Abu Bakr, who said, فوق السبع سماوات, actually confirms the view of Al-Dhahabi, who says that the majority of Salaf believed that Allah is in the upper direction. He is somewhere up there. Well, for our own understanding, it is inconceivable to think that Allah is somewhere up in the heavens. So eventually he was guided to Ali ibn Abi Talib, to Imam Ali. So they came to him and asked about his relation to the Prophet and asked about his knowledge, and he said, I can answer your question. So, of course, the hadith is very long. I'm summarizing it. They asked him, أين ربك? قال لهما علي عليه السلام إن شئتما أنبأتكما بالذي كان على عهد نبيكما موسى عليه السلام وإن شئتما أنبأتكما بالذي كان على عهد نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. If you wish, I can explain it to you the way it was explained at the time of Musa alayhi salam. Or I can explain it to you the way it was explained at the time of our Prophet, peace be upon him. And of course they said, explain in both ways. He said, okay, this is what was explained at the time of Musa alayhi salam. An angel came from the east. And an angel came from the west. And an angel descended from the heaven. And an angel ascended from the earth. When they met, the angel who had come from the east asked the angel who had come from the west, where are you coming from? He said, I'm coming from Inda Rabbi, from the presence of my Lord. I come from the presence of Allah. And then he asked the other angel, where are you coming from? He said the same thing. I'm coming from the presence of my Lord. The angel who had descended from the heaven asked the angel who was ascending from the earth, where are you coming from? He said, from the presence of my Lord. And vice versa. This one who was ascending asked the one who was descending, where are you coming from? And he said, from the presence of my Lord. This is how it was explained. And then Imam alayhi salam said, لَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَخْلُو مِنْهُ مَكَانٍ. Because no place, no space is empty from Allah. However, وَلَا هُوَ فِي شَيْءٍ, don't think that he is in any place or in anything. وَلَا مِنْ شَيْءٍ وَلَا عَلَى شَيْءٍ, don't think that he is established above something. وَلَا مِنْ شَيْءٍ وَسَعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. His kingdom spreads all over the heaven and the earth, and there's nothing like him. Do not imagine him the way you imagine any particular being, whether an angel or a prophet or a human being or whatever. This is how it was explained at the time of Moses alayhi salam. Now, and وَأَمَّا مَا كَانَ عَلَى عَهْدِ نَبِيِّنَا صلى الله عليه وآله, the way it is explained at the time of our prophet, فَذَلِكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي مُحْكَمِ كِتَابِهِ, it is his word, Allah's word, in the definitive verse of his book, ما يكون من نجوى ثلاثة إلا هو رابعهم ولا خمسة إلا هو سادسهم ولا أدنى من ذلك ولا أكثر إلا هو معهم أينما كانوا. No three of you whisper with each other except Allah is the fourth one of you. Fourth person among them. No four-person whisper, no five-person whisper, except Allah is the sixth of them. And not less than that, two people whispering, and more than that, whatever number, إِلَّا هُوَ مَعَهُمْ أَيْنَمَا كَانُوا. Allah is with them wherever they are. What is this ma'ahum? Is it like two physical things being beside each other? Is it his knowledge being with them or he being with them? Of course, he says, إِلَّا هُوَ مَعَهُمْ أَيْنَمَا كَانُوا. He is with them. So, it's very difficult for us to understand this concept about Allah, that he's present in the same time that he is not part of his creation, or his creation is not part of him. He's immanent, he's transcendent, both at the same time. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. He's manifest, he's hidden at the same time. So when we talk about knowledge of Allah, especially his knowledge which penetrates deep into his creation, what goes on in the mind of an insect in the dark night, of course Allah is aware of it. He is present there, not allowing the sense that he is sitting somewhere and his knowledge extends everywhere. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. So there's no need for him to send his son on the earth to know. He is himself on the earth, while he is not on the earth. You see the paradox? This is because لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. You cannot find an example for him in these cases. This is the deep ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, this ma'rifah is given to those people who deserve to receive this type of ma'rifah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, this is mentioned. The next verse is again related both to the qayyumiyyah of Allah and to the debate between Christians and the Prophet. هو الذي يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. He's the one who fashions you, forms you in the wombs the way he wishes. There is no God except him, La ilaha illallah, the Almighty, the All-Wise. Well, Aziz, we discussed about the meaning of Aziz, means nothing can prevent him from what he wants. And of course, wise means whatever he does is based on wisdom. Again, the verse is related to the debate between Christianity and Islam because, of course, Jesus was created in the womb of his mother, and he was created the way he wished. There's no meaning for him being son of God. While he was created, he was formed by him in the womb of his mother. And whatever other creature Allah wants to adopt as a son would be one of his creatures, would be someone who he has created. This is what is mentioned in Surah Zumar as well. لو أراد الله أن يتخذ ولدا لاصطفى مما يخلق ما يشاء سبحانه. Even if Allah wanted, law means he, of course, he never does that, but even if he wanted to adopt a son, again, that son should have been created by him, so he would have been one of his creatures. لاصطفى مما يخلق ما يشاء سبحانه. He's about what you think of having a son or whatever. So the verse is related to that argument. يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء. Now, this يصوركم, of course, the addressee of يصوركم are human beings, isn't it? We can, of course, imagine that other animals are formed in the wombs the way Allah wishes. A horse becomes like a horse, an elephant like an elephant, and any other animal. However, here, when the address is to human beings, means that you are formed the way he wanted, whether in your physical appearance, in your abilities, in your potentials, in your creativeness, the amount of mercy that you have, whatever you have is formed in the wombs of your mother by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where you didn't sustain yourself, he is the sustainer. So again, the relationship will go to Qayyum. The sustainer created and sustained you in the wombs. When you didn't decide about anything, we could not decide to put eyes for ourselves or fingers for ourselves because we even didn't know or comprehend what are the use of these things when we were in the wombs. So he did it. He knew what is the eventual destiny of this fetus that should come to this world, needs to grab things by fingers, needs to see things, needs to breathe, so nose, needs to talk, so tongue. All were created there for you without you knowing that you needed these things. So, where are you going? Who are you worshipping? Why are you attracted towards other things? La ilaha illallah. Al-Azizul Hakim. He wisely designed you and fashioned you and you came out. Then the next verse, which is one of the very important verses of the Quran. and is a guideline for how to read the scriptures, especially the Quran, which is of course a point of reference here. And you should not think that this book or other heavenly books which were mentioned at the beginning of the surah, وَأَنزَلَ التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ مِنْ قَبْلُ هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ وَأَنزَلَ الْفُرْقَانَ. These should be read in a way that Allah guides you to read them. Verse number 7 of Surah Al Imran talks about muhkamat and mutashabihat in the Quran and in any other scripture. It's always the case. Verse number 7, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. It divides the verses of the Quran into two groups, two classes. He is the one who has sent the book down to you. Part of it are definitive verses. And these are the reference for the book. The mother of al-Kitab here means if there is any misunderstanding about other verses, they have to be referred back to these definitive verses. هن منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. And some other verses which are mutashabih. Well, of course, it doesn't mean that you have to refer mutashabihat to the muhkamat because it says the muhkamat are ummul kitab. So we understand that if we come to a verse which is mutashabih, we have to refer it back to the muhkam. And this is a very important point because sometimes some of us just read a verse, get an understanding without knowing whether it's muhkam or mutashabih, without knowing other verses which should be a point of reference for this verse, and then we give a sort of exposition of that verse from ourselves, which misguides ourselves and others. We have to be very careful about that. Now, what is the meaning of muhkam? What is the meaning of mutashabih? Mutashabih here has been translated as metaphoricals. Part of it are definitive verses, which are the mother of the book, while others are metaphorical. Now, mutashabih is more general than metaphorical. Metaphorical verses, of course, are mutashabihat. Mutashabih means a sentence that when you read it, it may imply two different meanings. This is the meaning of mutashabih. Two or more. And that's why you wonder which one is the intended meaning of the verse. Now, this applies to metaphorical sentences, like, for example, Ar-Rahman ala al-Arsh istawa, Allah sitting on the throne. This is, of course, a metaphor for us to understand the extent of the power of Allah. وَسَعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This is certainly a metaphorical verse. So it's mutashabih. We have to refer it to muhkamat. However, mutashabihat are more general than metaphorical. Sometimes a verse is ambiguous in its indication, in its implication, because, for example, it is mansukh. It becomes mutashabih. Or because it talks about a social issue in a certain context, and we don't know whether that meaning is intended for another context or not. It's not metaphorical. So the best translation for metaphorical, for muhkamat and mutashabihat are unequivocal and equivocal, implying only one meaning, is quite clear, not ambiguous at all, and ambiguous in terms that it may be equivocal, implying several meanings, which we don't know which one is the intended meaning. So if that is the case, How do you understand? What is the intended meaning of mutashabahat? Refer it to muhkamat. That is the sort of method for understanding what is the intended meaning of mutashabahat. So, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. Why mutashabahat are there? Well, I will discuss it later. Couldn't all the verses of the Quran be muhkamat, definitive, not implying more than one meaning? No, it couldn't. Why it couldn't, I will discuss it later on. However, what we are concerned here is that the verses of the Quran are classified into two, muhkamat and mutashabahat. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. Those in whose heart is deviance. Zayr is to deviate from the straight path, either to the right or to the left. Zayr. Zayr of the heart is that your heart deviates from the truth, deviates from the straight path. This is Zayr. When, of course, in the following verse we have رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغَ قُلُوبَنَا. Do not allow our hearts to deviate, so that we can follow the verses of the Quran, referring the mutashabahat to muhkamat. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ. Those in whose heart there is a deviation, they follow the mutashabahat, they follow those meanings which have been confused because of the equivocation. Why they do it? For two purposes. Some ابتغاء الفتنة, some ابتغاء تأويله. ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله. They do is courting discord or temptation, or courting its ta'wil and intended interpretation. We end our discussion here, and inshallah we continue with this verse, which is one of the most important verses in the Quran, in our next session. رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنتَ الْوَهَّابُ وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وآله الطاهرين.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. We're just awaiting for Sheikh to join us. Inshallah, he'll be with us shortly. In the meantime, if I can just make a few announcements. Inshallah, this Friday is going to be Eid. We will be having Eid Salah at Mahfil. The Eid Salah will take place at 9 o'clock, and you will have to pre-register. Please look on the website for further details for this. Further to this, we also have Dua Arafat and Arafat Amals on Thursday, and that will inshallah be taking place at 7 p.m. If you do have any questions, please post them in the chat, or let me know that you wish to ask them by raising your hand, and I will inshallah unmute you. Sheikh has just joined us. So, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for the excellent talk today.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for administrating everything.
So I'm going to begin with the first question that's been posted by Nizar Uncle on the chat, which is, what is your personal concept of Allah?
What is my what?
your personal concept of Allah? How would we go about thinking of Allah for us?
Well, the first known concept is that we never can imagine him by our thoughts. He would not be grasped by imagination, certainly. And we have to wait, inshallah, until we go to the next stage of our life. Then we will have a vision of the heart of him, which is the most pleasant experience of any individual. The first concept of Allah that comes to my mind is that he's present everywhere, but he's not in the space. He listens, he hears more than we do. Of course, this is all his. And I try to not form any imagination of him or any conceptual understanding of him in my mind, because that is, of course, impossible.
So when we are praying and trying to achieve closeness to Allah, how should we begin to do this if we can't actually form a concept of what Allah is?
Sorry, let me put on my earphones.
Sorry, Sheikh, we don't seem to be able to hear you anymore. We can't hear you.
So if you please, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
If you please speak a bit louder, because I think there's a problem here with my system, so I cannot hear you very properly.
Sorry, yeah, I'll try and speak up. So
This is good now.
Yeah. So if we are trying to pray to Allah and gain closeness to Allah, but we can't form a conception of Allah, how do we go about doing this?
Well, certainly, I mean, we have an understanding of Allah, and that understanding tells us that we should not actually make any likeness of him. And that understanding is something which is present with us in our heart. We don't need to have an imagination of God in our minds. And as I said, any imagination, as Amir al-Mu'minin mentions in Nahj al-Balagha, that the deepest divers in their conceptual imagination cannot actually reach him. And it's impossible for the mind to form an imagination of God. However, he has placed something in our hearts, in our soul, that we know him the way we are sure about ourselves and our existence. Actually, we are sure about him, and we have to just worship him like that. And that's why all the time, subhanallah, he is beyond, he is above whatever imagination goes. And actually, in the interpretation of Allahu Akbar, they say that you cannot compare Allah with anyone or anything, saying that he's greater. It is impossible. So Allahu Akbar means Allah is greater than to be described or imagined. And that's the right meaning of that. So we actually in our prayers, we refer to that inner understanding that we have about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that inner understanding tells us that you should not imagine him.
Thank you very much. Sheikh, when we come to this verse that tells us that there are some clear verses and some metaphorical verses, or however you want to translate these, we then come to your tafsir sessions, and you take the clearest of verses and you give us 100 interpretations for them. And alhamdulillah, it's excellent. It's very nice to hear these interpretations, but it begins to make us think that even the clearest of verses can have lots of different interpretations. So how do we understand if a verse is clear or if it's metaphorical?
Well, actually, one of the main features of Ar-Rasikhuna fil Ilm, about whom I will inshallah talk in details next session, next week. One of the features of Rasikhuna fil Ilm is that they delve into these meanings. And if there is something ambiguous for them, they just stop informing a firm view about it and refer it to, of course, to the Prophet or Aimma, peace be upon them, that whatever they have said we follow, because they know the ta'wil of it, as we will inshallah mention next week. So it doesn't, if we delve into different interpretations, different views about it, certainly some of the views are against the muhkamat or clear verses in the Quran, so we reject them. As for example, if we say that on the day of judgment, people إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ, they will look at their Lord by their eyes. We reject this meaning because, of course, it's against the muhkamat of the Quran. However, it doesn't matter. If we say that إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ may have two acceptable meanings. One is vision of the heart, which is acceptable. And another, nadhara, means waiting. They are waiting for the reward of their Lord. Now, these two meanings are possible in this verse. There is a meaning which is not possible by referring to muhkamat, and that's a vision of the eye. So we reject that one, which is against muhkamat. Then we say about these two, we have to wait and see. And this is actually the depth of the knowledge of Rasikhuna, that they do not form views which are not based on evidence.
Thank you very much. In the comments, it's been suggested Allah is...
Can you please speak up? I cannot hear you properly, sorry.
Sorry. In the comments, it has been suggested that Allah is everywhere, within you, outside you. It is your insight, your vision, your closeness to Allah, which makes you see in every act of life. Is this a good way of thinking about what Allah is?
Well, that says about his presence. He doesn't say what he is, you see. We really don't know. We cannot describe him in that way. The best description of Allah, which is they say these are the pillars of the arsh, pillars of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The way we can describe him is Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha akbar. These four golden descriptions these are the four golden descriptions of Allah. That first of all, whatever I say about him is in my prayer, he is beyond what I imagine, subhanallah. Then alhamdulillah means whatever bounties, whatever ni'mah, whatever good is in this world, the praise of it should go to him. Secondly, no one is worthy of worship. Thirdly, no one is worthy of worship but him. And of course, Allah is beyond of any description. Allahu Akbar. This is the meaning of Allahu Akbar, isn't it? Allahu Akbar min an yusaf. I think this is the pillars of the foundation of our knowledge about God. Whatever else we say, of course, we have to refer it to the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and to the Quran. But what you described was that he is, of course, in the sense that he's present everywhere. Yes, that is explaining some aspect of it. Huwa al-Dhahir wal-Batin explains some aspect of him, that he's hidden, he's manifest. Well, Huwa al-Awwal wal-Akhir again explains another aspect. Then his attributes that are mentioned in the Quran explain some attributes of him. But in his essence, as we have in our narrations, no one can know what is the essence of God. We just know him through his attributes when he acts in his creation. However, this is limited to this short life that we have in this world. As we grow on, the wonders of paradise are not just the rivers and trees and houris and these things. These are just the environment of paradise. The wonders of paradise that is that every day, every morning, you come to a better knowledge of Him. You witness Him with your heart in a way that you could not witness Him the previous day. These are the wonders of paradise. And this is where we actually want to go. This is the pleasant pleasure and experience that we are going to have. However, when we say He is everywhere, provided knowing that He is not in space or in place, because He is the creator of where, and only in this sense, yes, of course, we can describe Him as
that. Thank you very much. If anyone does have any questions, please do post them on the comments, either on the YouTube or on the Zoom conversation. Sheikh, in some of the theological debates, it's argued that we can't actually describe what Allah is, we can only say what He isn't. So are you referring to some sort of understanding of Allah similar to this?
well, that's what they call negative theology. Yes, about His essence, of course, we can go to negative theology. However, we have positive theology about His asma, about the way He acts in the world, His beautiful names. Yes, we have هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور. I mean, we know that He is the one who fashions us in the wombs. We know that He has fashioned everything so beautifully. So we know these things about Him, but these are attributes of His acts. And we know that He is knowledgeable. We don't need to resort to negative theology about Him. We know that He is powerful. I mean, these three very main attributes of the essence: knowledge, power, and life. These are the three main attributes of His essence. We know about it. You know, we don't need to resort to negative theology in these cases. But beyond this, yes, of course, we have to go to negative theology, saying that what He is not. I mean, the way the Quran describes Him, Allah la ilaha illahu, okay, this is some sort of duty that is directed towards us. But then it says, Al-Hayyul Qayyum. Hayyul Qayyum, Al-Hayyul Qayyum are two very positive descriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we know He is the source of life, and we know that He sustains everything. This is great knowledge about Him.
Thank you. We've got a question in the comments. How can we refer to a hadith of the Prophet and Imams, even though we only have received very little ahadith?
Well, they say, what you cannot have the whole of it, all of it, you can, of course, take as much as is possible, is available. We do not have access to all the narrations or sayings of the prophets and the imams, and even that this chunk that we have access to contains spurious narrations, confused narrations, and all these things. But because this is the source for our spiritual knowledge, we have to struggle, we have to exert effort, and that's the meaning of ijtihad, to find out the best understanding of what is available. And the time of presence of the Imam is certainly not like the time when the Imam is not present. We are now in a time when the Imam is not present, so we do not have direct access to him to ask our questions. But by investigating through, by searching through the nations, we get knowledge as well. I mean, the descriptions that they have given about certain metaphysical aspects of life, about the hereafter, is great knowledge that we can attain. Of course, not everything that they have said has reached us.
Thank you. So, Sheikh, you say that we we should pay attention to what the Quran says and the acts that He has. So the Quran describes Allah as being knowledgeable. But when the Quran says Allah is knowledgeable, does it mean He has knowledge in the same way that we have knowledge, or is it some different sort of knowledge? So even when it comes to understanding these characteristics that the Quran gives us, how do we go about understanding them?
Well, one thing that we have to be very careful about is that we should not fall in the fallacy of anthropomorphism, thinking that Allah's attributes are like our attributes. For example, Allah's knowledge is part of His essence. His essence is knowledge, in the same way that His essence is life, in the same way that His essence is power. For us, this is not the case. Our knowledge is acquired, is not part of our essence. It attaches to us later on. So there's great difference here. Or when we talk about mercy of God, I think we have this before in our tafsir, that when we talk about, we're not talking about feelings, emotions. In us, mercy is a result of our emotions, a result of our feelings. No feeling or emotion, then there's no mercy. But for Allah, that is not the case, because feelings and emotions are limitations. For Him, there is no feeling and emotion. However, there is mercy. So we have to all the time, bring to our attention, as the Imam described, وَلَا يُقَاسُ بِالنَّاسِ. Never compare Allah to people. Never compare God to yourself. And so that we do not fall in the trap of anthropomorphism.
So Sheikh, you're saying that this knowledge is an essence of Allah. But how do you make this conclusion that the knowledge is an essence? Does that come from the Quran?
When we talk about Tawheed, when we say قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, Ahad is different from Wahid. Ahad means something which cannot be disintegrated, cannot be analyzed. It's a whole. And that's why our A'immah have emphatically mentioned that Allah's attributes are the same as His essence. There is not an essence of God and certain attributes of Him. God and His life, God and His knowledge. This is one of the major issues of theology in Ash'aris and Mu'tazilis and Shias, because Ash'aris believe that attributes of God are different from His essence. Allah knows by knowledge that He has, not that He is knowledge Himself. While our Imams have very clearly mentioned that you cannot analyze God, you cannot actually distinguish between different parts of God, since He doesn't have any part. It's all limitations that we have to remove from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a very delicate and deep theological matter, and I think we better do not delve into it now.
Thank you, Sheikh. We have another question from the comments. What do you think about following the path of irfan as a way to getting to know Allah?
Knowing Allah is only possible by heart. And of course, the journey of heart is a part of irfan. However, which irfan do we mean? Do we mean certain practices? Do we mean certain tariqas, for example, which follow irfan? Do we mean certain man-made methods for finding that knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I think, if we worship God sincerely, then He puts His knowledge in our heart. He allows our heart to witness Him, even in this world, to witness Him. And of course, the ultimate witness will be in the next world. However, if one worships God sincerely, humbles himself for Him, would not think that he's separate from God, independent, and God is someone and they are someone, then Allah will certainly put that knowledge in the hearts, make the knowledge to come to vision, and witnessing of Allah's presence in His creation. And that doesn't need a path of, say, for example, Sufi path or Tariqa path, things like that. I think by being very, very scrupulous about doing what is commanded and avoiding what is prohibited, then God knows whose heart is ready to put that knowledge into it.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. I think we have come to the end of our time. So inshallah, we resume again, same time next week.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, thank you, Sheikh. Always appreciated. And I think you've shed a lot of light on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Fi aman Allah.
Wa alaikum salam.